Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel, Gardening Cold Spring Harbor. Welcome back to Long Island, New York, Zone 7A. In today's video, we're going to talk about all the facts and, of course, all the myth when it comes to using, yes guys, when it comes to using hydrogen peroxide in our home garden. We will cover all the advantages and yes, all the disadvantages when it comes to using hydrogen peroxide in our home gardens. So for those of you looking for the online gardening channel that offers tips, tricks, easy yet proven gardening advice to take your home gardens to the next level, don't go anywhere guys, stick around. Start with going below this video and clicking the subscribe button. And if you never want to miss any of my new upcoming gardening videos, don't forget the bell icon as well. YouTube will notify you every time I'll upload a new garden video. Now come with me, let's talk all about using hydrogen peroxide in our home gardens. So now some of you gardeners might say that hydrogen peroxide is a chemical, and by using it, it can be very detrimental to your home garden. You know guys, hydrogen peroxide is indeed a chemical. So for those of you who have made this statement, this point in the past, your point is absolutely valid and absolutely legitimate, which is why we're going to cover all, not only the advantages, but also all the disadvantages when it comes to using hydrogen peroxide in our home gardens. So yes, hydrogen peroxide is absolutely a chemical. Its composition is H2O2. But you know what guys, everything out there in this world is a chemical as well, including water. Water's chemical composition is H2O guys. So as with any chemical, there's always advantages and disadvantages. There are good chemicals, but there are also bad chemicals out there in the world. So as I just mentioned, there are good chemicals and there are bad chemicals out there in the world. So when hydrogen peroxide disintegrates, breaks down, it breaks down into two chemicals. One chemical is water, the other chemical is oxygen. And both of those two chemicals that hydrogen peroxide breaks into are non-toxic and are good chemicals to be using. So if hydrogen peroxide breaks down into two natural chemicals, guys, that makes hydrogen peroxide a good chemical versus a bad chemical. However, again, there are not only advantages when it comes to using hydrogen peroxide in our home garden, there are also disadvantages. So now let's jump right into it and talk about all the advantages versus all the disadvantages. So in today's video, my goal is not to advertise hydrogen peroxide by any means, or promote a marketing company, or promote a manufacturing company of hydrogen peroxide. By all means guys, my point of this video is to tell you guys the truth, to inform you guys about all the advantages and disadvantages. I've been using hydrogen peroxide in my home gardens in the past, and I had some good luck using it, and then some bad things that happened to my home garden when I was using it. So I wanted to share all of these facts with you so you guys can become even more knowledgeable about this product and the use of it in your home garden. So now let's talk about what can and potentially will happen if you use hydrogen peroxide in your home garden. My first experience using hydrogen peroxide in my home garden was when I used it in a raised garden bed, such as this one. So I filled my raised bed with compost, with what I thought was organic, 100% ready compost. And then I started to see my plants wilting, leaves yellowing, and essentially my plants started to slowly die out. So what did I realize? What happened to my vegetables? What was wrong with my raised garden bed? So the fact is that the soil, the compost that I used was not 100% ready for gardening. And by placing that compost in my raised garden bed too early, I essentially started to hurt my plants by stripping them of that essential nitrogen. Hence, their leaves started to turn yellow. So not only did my plant's leaves started to turn yellow, a few days after that, I noticed a funky foul smell coming from my raised garden bed, specifically from the soil and that compost. So another fact about compost, if it's not 100% decomposed and ready for use, it will start to not only hurt your plants in your home garden, but also will start to give off a foul, funky smell, which would also alert you that that compost was not ready to be used. So what causes that foul smell? Bacteria and fungi cause that foul smell. So what did I do when I noticed and smelled that foul smell? I used hydrogen peroxide, 3% hydrogen peroxide, mixed it 1 part peroxide, 1 part water, added it to a watering can, and thoroughly watered my raised garden bed, hence killing off that bacteria and that fungi that gave my bed that foul smell. By adding 1 part hydrogen peroxide and 1 part water into a watering can and thoroughly watering my raised garden bed, it has helped recover my plants. It has helped tremendously recover those existing plants that were already growing and struggling in the raised garden bed. How did it help? It killed off the bad bacteria and the fungi. So that was a huge advantage. And it was actually the first time that I decided to try using hydrogen peroxide in my home garden. I was very satisfied with the result that I saw. As much of as an advantage that it was, the fact that hydrogen peroxide kills off the bad bacteria and the fungi, it is also a disadvantage, guys. And let me tell you how using hydrogen peroxide in our raised garden beds can be a huge disadvantage to our home gardens. So the advantage is that hydrogen peroxide will kill off the bad bacteria in our soil, hence potentially helping save our existing vegetables or herbs growing in that soil. However, there's also a disadvantage to that. And that disadvantage is that the fact that hydrogen peroxide can and most likely will kill the good bacteria in our soil as well, as hydrogen peroxide cannot and will not distinguish between the bad bacteria and the good bacteria, aka the healthy microbes in our soil that our soil so desperately needs. We home gardeners always need and want those healthy microbes in our soil, as it will contribute to a high fertility of our soil, hence more fruit and vegetable yield. So the point that I was trying to make and am trying to make is that hydrogen peroxide does sterilize the soil in your home garden. It kills all the microbes in your home garden, in the soil. It kills the bad microbes as well as the good microbes. So you should refrain from using it, especially in your raised garden bed, unless you absolutely have to do so. When hydrogen peroxide decomposes, it breaks down into 2 elements, one being water, one being oxygen. So when it does decompose, and it decomposes rather quickly, guys, it does oxygenate the soil, helping promote healthy and strong root development of our plants. Also, when added to the soil in our home garden, it helps decompose organic matter in the soil much faster than would naturally decompose without the use of hydrogen peroxide. But again, as I just previously mentioned, in doing all these great things to our home garden, again, it also kills all of the microbiology in the soil, both the good and the bad. So unless we totally necessarily have to use it, I would refrain from applying it to my home garden, especially to my raised garden beds. Hydrogen peroxide is better used in containers, guys, where we don't care as much about the microbiology especially if those containers are indeed indoors inside of our house. Which brings me to the next advantage, to the next point. So how does using hydrogen peroxide inside, indoors, in our pots and containers can be beneficial? Well, let me explain to you exactly how that's beneficial. So a great advantage of using hydrogen peroxide in our pots or containers is that if used in proper and correct ratio, it will kill fungus gnats and larvae, guys. So when used in 1-to-1 ratio, so 1 liter of hydrogen peroxide to 1 liter water, and when applied directly to the soil of our pot or container, it will kill fungus gnats and larvae. So if you're using it at least once a week for a period of a few weeks, I can guarantee you, you will not see any more fungus gnats or their larvae. So again, when I'm talking about the ratio, 1-to-1 ratio, whatnot, I am referring to 3% concentration of hydrogen peroxide. If the hydrogen peroxide you have at your home or you're using has higher concentration than 3%, then the ratio gets adjusted, guys. So you would use less hydrogen peroxide because it's stronger than 3% and much more water. Another great way to use hydrogen peroxide in your home garden is to soak your seeds with hydrogen peroxide. So when pre-soaking our seeds or soaking our seeds with hydrogen peroxide, and that is with 8-to-1 ratio, 8 being the water and 1 being the hydrogen peroxide ratio. So how does that help our seeds? If we soak our seeds for at least 12 hours in this 8-to-1 hydrogen peroxide mixture, we are helping prevent diseases as well as fungal diseases on our seeds. So we're killing off any potential disease that those seeds were carrying. And actually, by pre-soaking our seeds in hydrogen peroxide mixture 8-to-1 ratio, we are helping our seeds germinate much quicker than they would have done without that pre-soaking in hydrogen peroxide. Also, soaking our seeds for at least 12 hours in hydrogen peroxide mixture prevents them from essentially rotting in the seed starting mix, and it will prevent development of any fungal diseases. Another great advantage of using hydrogen peroxide in our home garden is that if mixed and used properly, and that is once again 8-to-1 ratio, 8 being the water composition, 1 part being the hydrogen peroxide composition, it can and will repel unwanted pests from our home garden. So yes, when used correctly, hydrogen peroxide is a safe and a natural way to repel. It's a pesticide basically in our home garden. So some of the pests that hydrogen peroxide can and will repel from our home gardens are aphids, spider mites, and even whiteflies, guys. But again, you have to be very, very careful with the ratio here. It has to be 8-to-1, 8 being the water, 1 being the hydrogen peroxide. You mix them together and you apply this mixture to the leaves and the stems of your plants. But again, if you're not cautious with that ratio and with the mixture, the composition of that mixture, you can potentially hurt your plant, because very high hydrogen peroxide composition in this mixture can burn the leaves of your plant, and you do not want that to happen. So if you are using hydrogen peroxide as a pesticide in your home garden, be very, very careful and diligent with the ratio composition. So another disadvantage of using hydrogen peroxide in our home garden is that in long term, it will reduce the fertility of the soil in your home garden. So in short term, it might seem very, very beneficial to use hydrogen peroxide. But again, guys, in long term, it will reduce, the use of hydrogen peroxide will reduce the fertility of your soil. So on short-term basis, it will appear as if hydrogen peroxide has helped your soil. But remember, guys, on long-term basis, hydrogen peroxide will kill off all the microbodies, the microorganisms in your soil, the bad ones and the good ones. Hence, it can be detrimental to your home garden. Another thing to be very careful and mindful about when using hydrogen peroxide in our home gardens is to make sure that there is no runoff from your home garden, say a lake or a pond or some sort of a water reservoir. Because if there is a runoff and hydrogen peroxide ends up running into that water, it can essentially hurt the living life inside that water, such as our fish. We do not want to hurt the aquatic life on planet Earth. So again, be very mindful where your home garden is located. However, hydrogen peroxide does decompose rather quickly into two components. Again, and those are water and oxygen. But as long as there's no runoff near your home garden and you're potentially not hurting any aquatic life, you're pretty good. You're on the safe side of using hydrogen peroxide in your home garden. Another amazing way to use hydrogen peroxide in our home garden is to have it help us disinfect our garden tools, such as our pruning shears, our shovels, and even our rakes. When disinfecting our garden tools, the correct ratio is 1:1. 1 being the water and 1 being the hydrogen peroxide. So again, 1 liter of water to 1 liter of hydrogen peroxide. This is it for this video, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me here in Long Island, New York, Zone 7A. In today's video, we spoke about all the advantages and the disadvantages of using hydrogen peroxide in our home garden. If you guys found this video to be interesting, useful, helpful, show me that support by clicking thumbs up below. Leave your comments below as well, guys. Let me know, have you ever used hydrogen peroxide in your home garden? Did you see any advantages versus any disadvantages when you used it? Also, for those of you who haven't yet subscribed to my gardening channel, no need to wait anymore, guys. Do so right now. Go below this video and click the subscribe button. Yes, guys, it's that simple. Yet it's so pleasing to me seeing that you guys are enjoying watching my videos and you are subscribing to my gardening channel, Gardening in Cold Spring Harbor. Be well, be healthy, happy, and I'll see you again in my new upcoming gardening videos. Bye, guys.